Let's today start with functions of data processing. We have already started with the 9th chapter and we have covered 9.1. Let's start with 9.2 today. Now, this contains one of the most important aspect of the data processing. From exam perspective also, this chapter is going to be a bit important. Let's start with the topic right away. Data processing involves the following processes. So what are the functions of data processing? It involves certain processes. The first one is validation. Okay, what does it validate? It means, what does validation mean actually? It means checking the accuracy and quality of source data, as in from the data has actually originated, before using, importing or processing of data. So what exactly is validation? It's basically checking the accuracy and the quality of the source data for what? Before it is being utilized or imported or for the processing of data. Now this eventually will lead to what? This validation will help you to either accept the data or reject the data, right? Now if data is legitimate, that means it is something which is useful and which is valid for the intended final use if they comply to the rules. So if they satisfy all the conditions above, then it will be deemed to be legitimate. That means it would be deemed to be legal. Legitimate means legal. So that can be used for the final use for the purpose of business. And finally, the objective of the validation is to assure a particular degree of data quality. So certain data quality is to be maintained. So validation will ensure that such quality is being maintained, right? So what is validation? Validation is basically checking the accuracy and the source of the data. Source of data before using, importing or processing of data. It helps you to accept or reject the data. If it helps you to know whether the data is legitimate, and if it is so, then it will help you to use it for the final purpose. And finally, the objective is to assure a particular degree of data quality, right? So the next step that we move on to is sorting. Now what do you mean by sorting? Sorting simply means that it involves the arranging of data in a meaningful order, right? You sort things, that is sorting, to make it easier to understand, analyze and visualize. So if the sorting is done in a proper manner, it will help you to understand the data, analyze for the business purpose, and you can foresee or you can make predictions for the business accordingly. So that is to visualize, right? Now this sorting can be performed on two things. One is on the raw data. Raw data means across all the records. So whatever data you have, sorting can be done on that, or it can be done on aggregated information. Aggregated information is nothing but something which is in the form of table, chart or summarized output. So basically sorting can be done on two things. One is raw data and the second is aggregated information, right? Now you would see that data is sorted in either ascending or descending order, right? If you go onto an Excel, you simply have an option of setting it in ascending or descending order based on the actual numbers or the percentages. So whichever way you want, you can actually do that. There are different apps for sorting. Now what are these different apps? Example, data cleaning, which helps you to know anomalies in a data pattern. So if there are any variations in a data pattern, then there are apps for that. So data cleaning is an app again which will help you to know what are the anomalies or what are the discrepancies in the data pattern. For example, monthly sales data can be sorted by month to know the volume variations. So monthly sales data you can see to see if there are any anomalies, that is any discrepancies in the volume variations. Now you would see that sorting is also used to rank or prioritize records. So if you want to set something as per priority, from high to low, more important to least important, so that can all be done through sorting. Now high volume accounts or heavy usage customers. Now if you go to a bank, you generally tend to prioritize customers who have a huge bank account balance. So if it's a high volume accounts or a heavy usage customers, so who have a lot of transactions, in that case sorting can play a very pivotal role. You can organize visualizations. Visualizations can be in the form of tables or charts, etc., to facilitate accurate data interpretation, right? Now basically you can see Excel is a good sorter. So generally whatever is being sorted, that is more often than not done through Excel only, but SQL databases does not have that as a default option. So if you are using a SQL database, then you need to program it accordingly. So that is what is sorting all about. So let's revise sorting quickly. Sorting is basically a process that involves the data in a meaningful order to make it easier for you to understand, analyze and visualize. They can be performed on two things. One is on raw data and the second one is on aggregated information. Raw data is across all the records. Aggregated information is basically in the form of table, chart or summarized output. Now it can be done in both ascending and descending order, either on the basis of actual numbers or the percentages. There are different apps for sorting. Data cleaning is one such app, and it helps you to identify the anomalies in the data pattern. And sorting is also used to rank or prioritize record. You can rank or prioritize according to your needs. Then you can organize visualizations. This can be in the form of tables or charts to facilitate accurate data interpretation. And finally, Excel is something which is a very good sorter. Although if you do it through an SQL database, then it's not a default option and you need to program it accordingly, right? Now the next one is we move on to aggregation. So first one we did was validation. The second one was sorting. And now we talk about the aggregation. Aggregation is what? It's basically culmination. So it simply means that data is collected through various sources and presented in a summarized format for analysis. So whatever data you have sorted, then you aggregate it so that you can do a proper analysis of all the data together, right? What is its application? To offer statistical analysis for group of individuals and provide relevant summary data for business analysis. So basically you aggregate things for what? For doing a statistical analysis. For what? For group of individuals. So if, for example, if it's a lower level management, in that case they would be needing data one by one. In that case, aggregation will play a very pivotal role. And to provide relevant summary data for business analysis. So if a top management wants to do an analysis, they can do only on the basis of the aggregation of data. So they need to have all the data together to basically analyze the business. That's what aggregation talks about. What are the different tools that we use for aggregation? It can be data aggregators, large scale data aggregation, right? These are the various tools that are used. Aggregation helps analysts to analyze huge data within reasonable time. So basically it's basically a time consuming process, time saving process rather. So if you do aggregation in a proper manner, it will help you to make decisions, or rather I can say quick decisions within a given span of time, right? Okay. So the next one that we talk about is analysis. Now analysis is what? Analysis is basically reading or interpreting the data. So process of inspecting, cleaning. So you inspect the data, you clean. You just filter whatever you need and dispose the ones which you don't. You transform and modeling data with goal of discovering useful information, informing conclusion and support decision making. So primarily it is used only for making conclusion and decision making. How do you do it? Analysis is basically done by inspecting, cleaning or filtering, you can say, transforming and modeling data with the goal of discovering useful information. Eventually for what? For making conclusions and support decision making. Okay, studying the past or future and basing judgments on that analysis. This is something we do for a day-to-day working. Yes or no? So whatever, whenever we need to make a decision, we refer to our past or future and make the decisions accordingly. When the same task is done by an analyst, for commercial goals, it is known as data analysis. So this is what is data analysis. I'll repeat that once again. If you study past or future based on judgments on that analysis, this is something we do for day-to-day working. But the same task, if it is done by a business person or a business analysis for commercial goal, then that is called as a data analysis, right? So basically analysis that you do for decision making based on the past or future and which can help you in day-to-day working is called as data analysis. Okay, if a firm is not expanding, it should avoid making the past mistakes. Yes or no? If they are not on an expanding spree, then whatever mistakes they have done in past, they should not repeat it. But if it is expanding, it must anticipate making it expand even more. So whatever mistakes have been done in past and you are expanding, that experience you can use to make sure that you don't repeat those mistakes once again, right? For this, data analysis plays a very, very important role. Hence, for this, data analysis should be done for both business and the operation. So if you are going into any kind of decision making, or if you are going for the operations, in that case data analysis plays a very, very important role. What are the tools? Various tools that we talk about are SQL, or it can be even Java, Python, etc. So these are the tools or various tools that are used for analysis. So what is exactly analysis? Analysis is nothing but it is basically inspecting, cleaning or filtering, transforming and modeling data. For what? For discovering useful information, eventually leading to what? Eventually leading to conclusions, and it helps in supporting decision making, or rather it helps in decision making. Now you can use the past or the future data for making judgment, and when the same task is done by an analysis for commercial goals, that is for the business purpose, it is known as data analysis. Firm is not expanding, then it should not repeat the past mistakes, and if it is expanding, then it can use its past mistakes to make sure it can refer to its past mistakes so that it is not repeated again, and they can expand it in a better way. For this, the data analysis should be done for both business and the operations. Tools are SQL, Java, Python, etc. Okay. Next we move on to reporting. Okay, what is reporting? Reporting is nothing that whatever you have collected, you have analyzed. In that case, you just culminate the data and you report it to the required person. Okay, there is a sequence of events that needs to be followed for reporting. First one is gathering and structuring raw data. You have basically unstructured data, you have validated it, then you have sorted it, and then you have made the analysis of it, so that raw data which was unstructured has become structured in nature now. So basically you first gather and structure raw data, you then take it into a consumable format. So it should be in a readable format, or it should be in a format which is accessible by the user very easily. And then finally what you do is you evaluate organization's continuous performance. So reporting basically includes three tasks. The first one is gathering and structuring raw data. Then you turn it into a consumable format. That means that you can read it, or you can analyze, or you can basically decipher it in a very easy to read manner. And finally what it does is it basically helps you to evaluate organization's continuous performance. So these are the series of events that are to be followed in reporting. Okay, how do you do reporting? It can be done through Excel data or simple visualization tool, right? So it can be data, it can be in the form of any kind of graphs, numbers, percentages. That is simple visualization tool. Okay, then data report is set of documented facts and numbers. So they are nothing but report is what? It is basically facts or numbers. Financial data are summarized in company's data reporting. Yes or no? Whatever data is there in terms of finance, that is financial data. This is all a part of data reporting. Data report indicate where the company should lay the maximum emphasis on, that is time and money. So whatever the important aspects are there, that can be laid emphasis on only with the help of reporting, right? So you get a report of something, and then you know where to dedicate your time and where to dedicate your money, so that company can make ideal decisions and they can maximize their returns, right? Or maximize their profit rather. Now there's no scope for any error in data reporting. Yes, because there has to be a high thoroughness and attention to detail. If not, then that can lead to a lot of problems in the business, or rather it can lead to a catastrophe in the business. So reporting of the data is very, very important, and it should be done in a very proper manner. It should be very thorough in nature, and the there should be a concentration of attention to detail. Okay, ability to organize and present data in easy to read fashion is a prerequisite for data reporters. You should prepare data in such a form that it is easy to read. When I spoke about this turning into a consumable format, then itself I told you that it should be very easy to read, and that's what reporting actually focuses on. Okay, what are the limitations of static reporting? Okay, static means what? Which is very stagnant. Okay, which the data is already collected and now you are reporting it. So what is the problem that you will encounter, or what are the limitations of that? There's an absence of real-time insights. Now you are reporting data which is already being collected. So it's very obvious that whatever is happening at a given point in time, that is present, in that case that data cannot be captured. Yes or no? So this is only talking about the older data. If there is any change in the trend or something which is happening recently, in that case static reporting cannot capture that. Now, but if it is a real-time reporting, that is absolutely fine. So whatever is happening, parallelly you get a data and information on that, then it's absolutely okay. But if it is a static reporting, then you will miss that real-time insights. If layout, data and formula not given timely to concern management, they may be proved to be irrelevant. So the layout, the data and the formula, these three things you remember: layout, data and formula. If it is not given to the concerned management on time, then that will become immaterial, or they will become irrelevant. So that's what reporting actually talks about. So reporting is what? Reporting is nothing but gathering and structuring raw data. Then you turn into a consumable format, that is easy to read format, and which eventually helps you in what? It helps you in evaluating organization's continuous performance. How it is done? It can be done through Excel data or simple visualization tool. It is a set of documented facts and numbers. Financial data summarized in company's data reporting, very, very mandatory. Data report indicate where the company should lay the maximum emphasis on, that is either time or the money. No scope for any error in data reporting. There should be high thoroughness and attention to detail. And finally, it should be able to organize and present data in easy to read fashion, and that is a prerequisite for data reporters. Limitations: first of all, there is an absence of real-time insights, and secondly, if layout, data and formula, that is LDF, layout, data and formula, is not given in a timely manner to the concerned management, in that case it can prove out to be immaterial or irrelevant. Okay. Finally, we talk about what? We talk about something called as classification, that is categorization. Before I start with this, let's quickly revise what are the points that we learned right now. First one is validation. What are we talking? First of all, we are talking about data processing. Data processing, it involves what? All processes. So processes are, first one is validation, second one is sorting, third one is aggregation, fourth one is analysis, fifth one is reporting, and finally we talk about classification or the categorization, right? Okay, what is categorization? It is to categorize or to basically break up in whatever order that we need, so that we are able to comprehend the data rightly. Okay, first of all, process of classifying data as per important categories, so that it is utilized and safeguarded effectively. So first of all, as per its utilization and as far as its data privacy is concerned, in that case classification plays a very important role. Important from perspective of risk management, compliance and data security. Three most important points. Categorization is very important from risk management purpose, from the compliance purpose, and from the data security purpose. Okay, it involves labeling. Labeling is a process for what? For making the data searchable and trackable, right? Avoids duplication of data. There should not be any repetition of data. That's what classification does. Eventually minimizing storage, backup expenses, and accelerate search procedure. So three things duplication takes care of. Avoids duplication, that is classification. That will help you to minimize the storage. It doesn't it will cut down on your backup expenses, and it will basically accelerate your search procedure. So if you need to search something, categorization is a very handy tool. And obviously it can reduce your backup expenses, because if you need to store some data and there is a repetition, then it will eat up more space. So in that case, if you do a proper classification, in that case your backup expenses automatically come down. Okay, then you talk about categorize for variety of purposes. Now what are these purposes? Facilitating access. If someone needs to have an access, in that case categorization is very important. It also ensures regulatory compliance and achieving commercial or personal goals. So if there is any compliance that needs to be taken care of, which is regulatory, in that case classification is important, and it also helps you to achieve the commercial and personal goals. So commercial and personal goals simply means that the data which is required for any specific person or a company, that is not being leaked or it is not being revealed to people unless and until they should have an access to it. So that's what classification does. At times it is statutory obligation. Statutory means it is a regulatory obligation or a legal obligation. Data must be searchable and retrievable with predetermined deadlines. So if you are doing a classification, then it also helps you in what? It helps you to search the data, and if it is to be retrieved with predetermined deadlines, that also categorization help you to do that, right? So let's revise what is categorization or classification once again. Classification simply means dividing a data into different categories so that it is utilized and safeguarded. Please remember, utilize you will remember, that's very obvious, but it has to be safeguarded also. So for safeguard purpose also, classification plays a very important role. It is important from the risk management perspective, and data security. Involves labeling. Now what does labeling do? To make data searchable and trackable, duplication of data is avoided. Eventually what does avoiding duplication does? Minimizing storage, backup expenses, and accelerate search procedure. And it is categorized for variety of purposes. Now what are the varieties of purposes that categorization can do? First is it can facilitate access, it can ensure regulatory compliance, and it helps in achieving commercial or personal goals. At times it is statutory obligation. Data must be searchable and retrievable with predetermined deadlines. Okay, that's it. These are the processes that are involved. Now let's talk about various methods or the primary methods of data classification. So part of this as per the industry standards. First is based on the content. Okay, now what is based on content? If the data is to be categorized, it can be based on content. It can examine and interpret files for sensitive data. So if it is examining and interpreting file for sensitive data, then that is based on content. If it is based on context, it is application, location, and creator as indirect markers of sensitive information, right? So first one is examines and interpret files for sensitive data. That is when it is based on content. If it is based on context, it talks about application, location, and creator as indirect makers of sensitive information. And finally, it is user based. User based is depends on human expertise, obviously, and judgment during document creation, editing, review, or distribution. So please remember three things. The three methods of data classification is based on content, context, and it is user based, right? Let's move on. Now there is a standard practice to divide data and systems into three risk categories. This data and systems are divided into what? They are divided into three risk categories. Very obvious. One is low, one is moderate, and one is high, right? So what does low does? Data is accessible to public and recovery is simple. Yes, because it is low risk. So low risk data is basically to something which public can have an access to, and its recovery can also be simple. But if it is moderate, then it is non-public or internal, right? That is business or partner specific data. It does not lie under high risk, obviously, but it also doesn't lie in low risk, right? So it is but you should concentrate on the fact that it is not a high risk category thing. It includes operating processes, cost of products, and certain corporate paperwork. So basically, moderate risk is something wherein it can be used only for the business purpose. It can be either done by business partners or it can be done by the business itself, right? So, but please remember, it is non-public and it is internal. Finally, we talk about the high risk. High risk is what? It is very sensitive or very critical to operational security. It is incredibly difficult to retrieve if lost. So it is very sensitive data, has to be held in a very proper manner. Secret, sensitive, and essential data falls under this category. So three categories of data and systems based on their risk. First one is low risk. Low risk is one thing which can be accessible by all the public and the recovery is very simple. Moderate risk, it's something which is not high risk is moderate risk. It is accessible to whom? For the non-public or the internal, that is business or partner specific. What all it includes? It includes operating processes, cost of products, and certain corporate paperwork. Finally, we talk about the high risk. High risk is something which is very sensitive or critical to operational security. It is incredibly difficult to retrieve if lost. Secret, sensitive, and essential data falls under this category. So that's these are the different categories of risk. Okay. Now we need to read about data classification matrix. Okay, what does this matrix talk about? This is nothing but this is again based on the risk categorization that we read right now. Okay, the first one is it talks about what? It based on how much the system is likely to be hacked and how much the data is sensitive. So it talks about the sensitivity of the data that you have and how likely it is to be hacked. Say if it is a low risk, then it's absolutely fine. But if it is a high risk, which is company specific and which cannot be retrieved, in that case that becomes a very important data. So or we can also call that's a very confidential data. So that's what the data classification matrix talks about. It enables you to classify and safeguard all sensitive information. So what all types of data is categorized under what under heads, that's something we are going to read about. That's what the data classification matrix talks about. Now basically the risk is, again we know that one is high, one is medium, and one is low. We know that the low one is public data, medium one is sensitive data, and the high one is confidential data, right? Let's talk about the high one first, because that's something that needs to be safeguarded or protected in a very with a lot of due diligence. First one is institution impact. Okay, what impact does it has? Its impact is very high. Yes or no? If the data is lost or it is not safeguarded, then that the impact can be very high or it can be very negative in nature. If incorrect or improperly disclosed and not available on time, in that case that can cause a lot of hardship to the organization, right? Second one we talk about is description. Confidential data to be controlled from creation to destruction. Yes, confidential data cannot be left at ease. There has to be a keen vigil on all these things. So it has to be controlled properly from creation to the destruction, and the access should only be given to those who have to perform the job using such data and for those permitted by law. So only two kind of people can be given high risk data or the confidential data: the one who are going to perform the job with that data and the one who are being permitted by the law, right? Permitted by law simply means if any organization who's a watchdog, for example a SEBI or an RBI or a income tax department asks the data, then that is to be given to them. Or if it is only meant for management decision and it has to, and it doesn't uh, it is very important from company's perspective, so that the data is not leaked, so that competitors may use it. In that case also confidential data is very, very important. So the access can only be to the people who have to perform the job using that data, or for the people who have an access by law, right? Now access to such data shall be authorized by the designated person. Who is this designated person? He is called as FSMR. FSMR is Functional Security Module Representative. Please remember this word, FSMR. FSMR is Functional Security Module Representative, right? Who have the access to it? We have already read about it, but this is again one more point. Only to individuals designated with approved access. So who have an access to it are the one who can get the access to this information rather. Okay. Okay, the second one is medium or the sensitive data. Here the impact is very, very moderate when typically needed and not made available. So institution impact is, it is very moderate and it will be given only when needed, and it is not made available so relatively. It is of lower risker category as compared to high or confidential data, but then it will be made available only if it is needed, right? Okay, again the data to be requested and to be authorized by FSMR. FSMR, Functional Security Module Representative, the one we read in high risk category, the person who is to authorize that. It is authorized to group of persons on basis of job classification or responsibilities. If you remember, when we did moderate risk, we spoke about non-public or internal, as in the employees of the organization can use only this data. So this is what it is talking about. It talks about it is only authorized to group of people on the basis of job classification or responsibilities. Non-public or internal data is moderately sensitive. We have already discussed that. It's just this matrix again elaborates that. Such data is used for making decisions, hence should be made available and should be accurate. Any data for that matter should be accurate. That is something which you can all add in all these categories, but it should be made available only to people who should have an access to it, and it also plays a very vital role in making decisions. Access, employees and non-employees who have business need to know. So we needs to know it, only they need to have an access to it. Please remember, in high risk it's only for the designated individuals, whereas here employees and non-employees who have a need to know it can have an access to it. Finally, we talk about the low, or which is called as a public data. Public data impact is very, very low, inconvenient but not seriously hampering, right? So it may be inconvenient if the data is hacked, but it doesn't really hamper the image of the organization. Okay, description. It can be granted to anyone who requests or publish with no restriction. It is not sensitive. Integrity of such data should be protected, and FSMR should be authorized copying of data to ensure its accuracy over time. So it's basically easily accessible data, not so sensitive, and FSMR still must authorize copying of data to ensure its accuracy over time. So if someone needs the data, they can take this data, or they can copy the data, but that can be done only with the authorization of FSMR, that is Functional Security Module Representative. Access, who has an access to it? All the affiliates and the general public with a need to know. Someone who needs to know or someone who are directly related to the organization are the people who can have an access to it, right? Fine. This point is very, very important. Please have a look at this. Data may be classified as restricted, private or public by an entity. Now an entity can distinguish the data based on three things. They can define it as restricted, it can be private or a public. Public data is least sensitive. That's very obvious because it is accessible to all the public and have low security requirements, whereas restricted data are more sensitive and have higher security rating. Let's quickly revise data classification matrix. Again, it is categorized into three risk categories: high, medium and low. High is what it is confidential, medium is sensitive, and the low one is public. It is categorized, this risk is categorized or into three parts. One is on the basis of institution impact, then description and access. When we talk about the high, it talks about institution. In terms of institution impact, it is very high, and if it is incorrect, if incorrect, improperly disclosed and not made available, then it can be prove out to be very hampering for the business, and it should be made available on time. Description, it should be controlled from creation to destruction and available to only those who have to perform the job using such data and for those permitted by law. And it should be access to such data should be authorized by someone called as FSMR, that is functional security module representative. The access only to individuals designated with approved access, right? Then we talk about the medium, something which is of not high category becomes a medium. It is moderate when typically needed and not made available. The data is to be requested and authorized by the FSMR. It is authorized to the group of people on the basis of their job classification and responsibility. So it is primarily meant for the internal employees or the internal people of the organization. Non-public or internal data is moderately sensitive. Such data is used for making decisions, hence should be made available timely, and again it should be accurate. And employees and non-employees who have business need to know, they only can have an access. Finally, we talk about the low or the public data. Impact is very low, inconvenient but not seriously hampering. Granted to anyone who request or publish with no restriction, not sensitive. Integrity of such data should be protected, and FSMR, that is functional security module representative. I know I am repeating so that you can remember this. FSMR must authorize copying of data to ensure its accuracy over time, and basically the access is to affiliates and the general public who have the need to know. Finally, we talk about the data may be classified as restricted, private or public by an entity. Public data is least sensitive, have low security requirements, where restricted data are more sensitive and high security rating. We come to the last part of the chapter. It talks about the data classification process. Now, automation can assist in simplifying the process of data classification, but an organization should prioritize the data that needs to be classified based on its relevance. So, data can be classified, but it can be done either through the automation, right? And also the organization should make sure that they should prioritize the data that needs to be classified based on its relevance. Now, policies and procedures should be well defined. Security need to be considered. Confidentiality of data shall be simple for staff to comprehend, right? That's what data classification process does. Okay, what are the effective steps for data classification? Okay, first of all, understanding the current setup. Before classifying data, one must know that data is one having. You should know what data you are carrying with you. There must be a detailed look at the data and its applicability, as that is the starting point of successfully classifying data. So the first thing is you should understand the current setup. Second thing is creation of data classification policy. You need to create a policy. First you need to understand the setup, then you need to create a policy. Policy is what? Policy should be in place for maintaining compliance. So whenever you talk about policy, you talk about the compliance with data protection standards in an organization. Finally, you talk about prioritizing and organizing data. So first you understand the current setup, then you create a data classification policy, and finally you prioritize and organize data. It is based on what? It is based on sensitivity and privacy of the data. Data shall be prioritized and organized, right? So we'll quickly revise what we have done in data classification process. Data classification process simply says automation can simplify the classification process. The organization shall prioritize the data based on what? Based on its relevance. Now it is policies and procedures shall be what? They should be very well defined, and it should be and security need to be considered. Confidentiality need to be considered. Confidentiality of data, and it should be simple for staff to comprehend. What are the steps? Various steps are: you understand the current setup. In understanding the current setup, one must know what data one is having. They should have a detailed look at the data and its applicability, as that is the starting point. Then you talk about the creation of data classification policy. A policy should be in place for maintaining compliance with data protection standards in an organization. Finally, you prioritize and organize data. You prioritize and organize data based on what? Based on the sensitivity and privacy, right? This is what these are the steps for effective data classification. With this, we'll finish 9.2. If you have not seen the other chapters, it has already been covered. So please have a look at 9.1 and chapter 8. Please like the video, because that would give me a motivation to make such videos, more such videos. And please do subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss out on any of the further coming videos, right? I'll ensure that I'll finish all the videos of this part of your module, so that you're able to score at least 15 to 18 marks. And I assure that if you watch all my videos, you would be easily able to do that, right? Thank you for watching, and happy learning.